Hello. Today's video is about a failed, broken, or unusable UNI-T UTD 1025CL oscilloscope. Um, First of all, I would like to bring a bit of context on what happened and what were my initial expectations with this oscilloscope. You can find a lot of reviews on the internet, and I'm pretty sure most of them paint a rosy picture regarding the product. However, I will tell you my actual experience with it, and I hope this video is going to be highly instructional or useful to know in case you wondered or were interested to buy such a product. Well, first of all, let's bring a bit of context in here. This particular model was interesting because it was an affordable oscilloscope. It was one that was reasonably portable. As you can see, it can fit quite well in the hand, although it's quite heavy. I think it weighs over 1 kilo. It was an affordable model that you could have for around if I remember correctly, something in the vicinity of 300 US dollars or euros, which is not a bad price. However, as you can see over here, it's we are looking at a 25 megahertz oscilloscope, so it's mostly a baseline model. However, some details regarding its construction and others pertaining to the actual way in which it operates, I think are quite common in the whole range. As you can see, the box clearly states on the lower side UTD 1000. So it's a whole series that has just some different probably schematics and design features in order to accommodate manufacturing product that can handle from 25, I think, to around 100 megahertz. So quite a large array of products. I think there is another one with 50 megahertz and clearly a 100 megahertz model. I don't know if there is one that could be more, but I will leave those details in the description. And of course, this is a model that, as you can see, has only a single plug for an oscilloscope probe. So it has only a single channel. It's not a dual channel oscilloscope, although UNI-T also offers dual channel oscilloscopes. Keep in mind that this model was purchased in 2020, so it's not an old model by any stretch, and particularly so for oscilloscope, considering that they are products that can reliably be used for 5 years or even more, and there is very little reason for you to change to another model unless you have very specific requirements. So this was expected to be a highly reliable model. And of course, back then and prior to my purchase, I was not aware of any sort of issue regarding reliability. However, in less than 1 month, I found out that there are clearly reliability problems, and still I had the hope of having a product that could withstand the test of time and live longer than its warranty. However, this was not the case. The product, unfortunately, since I have not used it for quite some time, was operational in 2020, in 2020 and then in 2022. But however, we are in 2023 and we notice that the product is no longer operational. So it's very interesting in this respect that you can find a product that could have a firmware issue. And clearly this is the problem we are seeing over now. It doesn't matter how many times you're going to power cycle the product, it will still end up in this state. So I had the expectation of having a good product. Unfortunately, this was not the case. I looked previously at Handtech and other manufacturers and considered the UNI-T to be a reasonable one, of course, considering the price, because you have to understand this is not um, a manufacturer made by Tektronix or any other serious and well-established brand. It's made by UNI-T, that of course is a Chinese manufacturer that previously catered to various products that were for measuring purposes. However, this product, as you can see, clearly did not behave well. And I'm stressing it, and I will stress it again because it's totally unexpected for something that should be highly reliable to behave in this way. And particularly when you are buying a product that you are trying to rely on for so long and for so much, I think it's unacceptable to leave something on this market. It doesn't matter if it is a Chinese manufacturer, if it is an European, an American one. It doesn't matter if it's manufactured in China, if it's manufactured in other country that of course has some advantages in terms of labor costs. It doesn't matter. It shouldn't be in this state. And unfortunately, I have to say that as far as I can tell, this is not going to be a problem that can be easily solved. So probably the device is going to be scrapped. And I have to say this is extremely annoying. So, and of course I don't have the expertise to diagnose it any further than just noticing the issue. And of course I will dismantle the device, but I'm pretty sure nothing is going to be obvious on the inside. And since it's a device that is most likely highly integrated, there are very few components that may be to blame. And if it's something about a memory chip or something else pertaining to flash, I cannot solve it clearly. I do not have the expertise, I do not have the tools, and of course I do not have the schematics or anything that could help me track and find out the issue. So getting back to the product. Yes, my first experience with it, unfortunately, was already a warranty recall. And it was a warranty recall that was started by me because the first product I received had two lines that were showing on the display, and this clearly shows that the display had an issue. So right off the bat, the product had poor quality control. I don't understand exactly what were the reasons behind this situation. However, this was my first experience. So this is the second scope I received, and I have been using it rarely in the last 3 years, most likely in the last 2 years, because the year prior I haven't had started it. So yes, I don't think it's understandable, and yet you see what you have over here. However, let me also present to you what were some of the accessories that come with it and tell my general perspective on it, because I also used it for a while. Alright, so first of all, it comes in a box that is quite large. The box contains this bag that you can see. It's quite a large bag that can hold the device and also all its accessories. It's quite obvious, but anyway, I have to present it as such. So inside the bag you find, and I'm going to present to you because you're not going to be able to see it, a set of probes, as you can see over here. Your micro USB to USB-A connector, which is required since there is a rechargeable battery that powers the scope. Of course, right now it's plugged directly, but it doesn't matter because the issue is not the battery, and I have disconnected the battery just in case you wonder. there is an adapter that I think, yes, it's used in order to connect the test probes. And this is useful when you want to use the scope as a multimeter, because you can also do that. I have used it very sparingly, and unfortunately, as a multimeter in general, using a scope as a multimeter is not going to be a highly successful endeavor. First of all, because multimeters are, in some ways, much more sensitive to values, and the readout is faster, since it doesn't require an additional processing in order to show the values on the screen. And this is why, in general, using a scope as a meter is not a very wise choice. However, you have this possibility. The probes themselves, the test probes, I think they are of reasonable quality. Clearly, I have seen much better quality ones, but these ones are at least at the mainstream or your average quality. So it's not bad in itself. And you have a second adapter that I think can be used in order to measure currents, because it says over here 40 milliamps, 400 milliamps, and the microamp range. I have never used this adapter, but I guess you can also measure currents. In general, I would not recommend you measuring currents with a scope, because it's a situation where all the power that may reach a particular product is going to pass through the oscilloscope, and sudden voltage spikes or anything else that goes wrong in your device may affect your scope, and particularly if you're not going to plug the scope correctly when measuring, meaning using it in parallel or short circuit testing, as I'm doing when testing batteries, but for different reasons, and of course within the safety margin that I already know too well, or any other situation where you would be thinking about measuring current. So I would not recommend that, but keep in mind you can do so. Alright, and you also have a power adapter that you can see over here. It's a reasonably good build quality, I think. It's a 9-volt power adapter. Yes, 9 volt at 4 amps. So it's quite a large power adapter, but clearly it's required because you have to power both the scope and your internal battery that has to recharge. So you have to take that into account as well. Alright, and you also have the required power adapter. This is the standard European plug, and your standard 3 pin plug that is also available and required on the power adapter itself. And in case you wonder, you have to power the adapter to power your scope by placing this standard barrel connector in the recessed part of the device on the right side. And you can see over here the additional micro USB port. As far as I can tell, this device can also be used with computer, so probably using the required application you can have the same readouts and the same screen that is going to be presented over in this instance is also going to be shown on your computer. I have never used this feature, but I assume this was the purpose for it. And you have the probe connector that can be used for various other purposes, just in case you want to see what's being written over here. Alright, so this is most of what you would expect for a device of this type. And of course you have the connector that is being used for the multimeter function. So you can measure voltages, resistance, continuity tests, and as you can see also you can measure capacitance. However, let's mention something right off the bat, and probably one of the aspects that should have made me reconsider this purchase early on. As you can see, this bayonet connector that is typically used for high frequency signals, ones that can go to hundreds of megahertz actually, is not entirely made out of metal. Since part of it is made out of plastic, it is quite a good hint that there may have been other cost reduction goals that were applied to this product. And I think this should have told me quite a lot, because ultimately it's a component that costs less than, I think, 100 cents, $100 cents, or euro cents. I think it costs even in the tens range, because since it's a highly mass manufactured component, there would be no reason for it to cost that much. So think about it. This is a plastic shrouding, because it's not even making full contact. They have not used a metal one. This just reeks of cost saving. However, I accept my mistake, and probably this tells a lot about what you could have done to understand better if the product can be reasonably expected to be of a good quality, and this wasn't clearly the case, unfortunately. All right, let me see if I can find also the manual, because I would like to present to you some other details. But before that, this is the probe that is being supplied with the meter. It's a probe that can be most probably used up to 50 megahertz, because in general they never stop at the same sampling rate that the scope itself is going to be limited. It's your typical probe. I have seen higher quality probes. I think this one should be enough for certain measurements. I have placed most of these accessories as they were before, because I wanted to show to you exactly what you're going to receive in the package. And you also have the CD that comes with the unit in order to install the software and be able to control it or see the results on the monitor, on your PC. And as you can see over here quite clearly, it's a 2018 manufactured model. This in some ways is not entirely surprising. I mean, buying it in 2020, there would have been no surprise, considering it was manufactured in 2018. This is typical. To make a new product range, you would require some years in order to develop it, and clearly when it will reach the market, they are not going to sell like hotcakes. So it means that having a product that is built 2 years prior to reaching you as a customer is not going to be an issue. And of course you can see the 600 volts marking on the probe. I'm not entirely sure. You can see the same value being printed on the scope itself. I'm not entirely sure if it's clearly up to the standard that it asks or it presents itself as being up to. Alright, so this is the packaging, and I think this sums up quite well what you can see. But let's try and notice if there are some specifications. If not, I will surely have them in front of me when I'm going to disassemble the product, because I will also show you the inside of the product, which of course I think more than 19% of the reviewers never did. Alright, so this is the device. Just in case you wonder, I will stop and start the device, but this will not have any sort of implication, because ultimately after you're seeing this loading screen, the device should start operation, and there is a screen that should resemble the same layout as the one on the box. However, you're not going to see it. And yes, in case you're wondering, it's a digital oscilloscope. It had the ability to store the waveform and retrieve it, and it also had different other features that you might expect. However, as said, this doesn't have any sort of bearing on the ultimate result, which was that the device is not operational anymore. So it doesn't matter what kind of specifications it has if it's not working. Alright, so as you can see, the device should have started by now. In general, while you will see in some videos the device has taken quite a while to start, I think that in less than 20 seconds it should reach the stable operation state. And however, this device clearly doesn't do so. So, okay, I think I have presented to you enough about the product. One further notice I would have is that the keyboard is quite nice, but nothing to be particularly surprised about. You can feel that the buttons pressing could have ensured a better tactile feel, but thinking about the fact that you could not have seen the product presented in another place, you would not have the chance of knowing too well what you're going to purchase. And one last note, this is the battery pack. The battery pack, in some ways, I think it's quite good. I have not used extensively battery operation because most likely you would not want to stress the battery unless you have to use it as such. Particularly so when ordering this battery pack is not particularly easy. And there are some screws that held it in place, as well as a stand that can be used in order to have a different angle and a different way of operation. And as you can see over here, there are some recessed holes where you have to use quite a long screwdriver in order to disassemble the product. The battery size, I don't think it's bad. It could have been higher. I'm expecting the product to draw quite a lot of current. Think about it. The power adapter is rated for 4 amps. The battery is rated at 3.6 amps. This clearly shows you that the device can probably draw around 500 milliamps or 1 amp, which is not little in this situation. So a consumption of around 7 watts is somewhat similar to the one you would see on your typical powered oscilloscope, mains powered oscilloscope. In terms of other aspects, what were my initial expectations and why I chose this model? I chose it first of all because I wanted to have a model that was much more advanced in its features than the ones I previously had, and moreover I was interested in having one that could be highly portable, and this was one of the reasons why models that were still mains powered but were much smaller and had an LCD screen were not necessarily interesting to me, although UNI-T also provides these products. Okay, so I hope this initial video shows you quite well the product, and of course my disappointment in using it, even if I haven't used it quite a lot. And before having any sort of comments and discussion, this product was kept in its original packaging in very good conditions. It wasn't placed in front of heat sources or excessive humidity. It stayed indoors at a temperature that was around 21 to 28 degrees and a relative humidity that mostly hovered around 50. So it clearly wasn't placed in an environment that was in any sort of way affecting it. So the only possible outcome would be that the device had some design flaws. And thinking that there was a time when some products were some products that had a microcontroller were noticed to have a failure mode that was triggered due to them trying to rewrite part of their memory, if I remember correctly, of their initialization routine. And I'm not entirely sure if this was the case. Clearly, there was some flaw that made the device not operational, because it wasn't subjected to any sort of electric shock. It wasn't due to mishandling. Everything happened when it was in storage, and just having the battery plugged is impossible to create such an issue. And right now, of course, it's unplugged. Alright, so without further ado, I think it's quite well to move on to the next stage and see what is inside this oscilloscope. Alright, so I will jump cut on the next video.